This week's episode of Be Hero Fights is brought to you by Devotion Championship Wrestling.
Hey there, this is Dougie Fox, and I'm the host of the Devotion Wrestling Podcast. If you like professional wrestling and you want to get more content in your day, come check us out. We drop episodes every week on Thursday on Spotify and SoundCloud. We have really fun interviews with local professional wrestlers in the Utah area, as well as we review and discuss other pro wrestling news and current events. So check us out on Spotify and SoundCloud every Thursday.
Welcome to Be Hero Fights. I'm Tom.
And I'm Brian.
And we are here to discuss
Or fuss.
over two hotly debated, highly related topics.
So this week, we're actually going to try something a little different. Due to Facebook removing the ability of doing polls on pages, we're actually going to be adding in random new judges who will be here with us live while we do our recording and judge our particular thoughts and points and everything else. And he or she will be the ones to choose what we're doing and how, whether we won, lost. Those will be here to fact check us too, because some people think that I might have the facts average the same as our current presidential candidates.
Hashtag Disney games were on Sega Genesis.
Oh, shut your face. Also, for this week, we're actually going to be starting our very first tournament.
The moment you've all been waiting for. We've talked about it. You've heard it advertised. Although, admittedly, we had to make a few last-second changes to the tournament, but we are going to be releasing a bracket system. So go ahead and fill out the bracket and submit it. Those who have the closest bracket to the end will probably win a prize.
Probably. No, you will win something in some fashion. So we're going to go ahead and get everything started. But let's first start by introducing our special guest judge.
Yes.
Our special guest judge is actually a very old friend of mine. For you who don't know, I am actually a trained professional wrestler. I've been doing it for over 16 years. And this gentleman is actually the man who trained me. His name is Nicholas James Hardy. Everyone just calls him Nick, Hardy, Psycho, or Pain in the one of the two. So I'm going to have him come and say hello, and then we'll bring him back on a little later.
Welcome. Thanks for having me, guys. It's going to be fun, and can't wait.
All right, and now you're going to have the mic taken away from you for a while. We know how you do your promos there and go on for a while. So
Yes. Awesome. This is going to be a really fun one. So, as you all know, this is the epic battle of whiskeys that we are starting this week. The changes that I alluded to earlier. So, I've heard about Russian whiskey a few times. Turns out there's not really Russian whiskey right now. There was in the past, dating back to just shortly after World War II, there was a Russian whiskey company that started, and then also one in the early 70s. Two major companies that did it, but neither of them are around anymore. Back in 2016, one of them did start, but they're starting in I believe it's an 18-year.
Yeah, an 18-year barrel, which is going to be amazing.
Yeah.
In several years.
Yes, so that's not around yet. There are no Russian whiskeys for us to try. I've heard it thrown around, but I guess you know how brains work. So that is going to be replaced. We're changing things up a little bit. This week we are going to be doing Tennessee versus Kentucky whiskey. The upcoming battles, we are going to have Irish versus Scotch, of course, the two epic. Everyone's two favorite accents, right?
Aye.
Oh, yeah. Then we will be doing, instead of bourbon versus, anything else, bourbon really is Kentucky whiskey and bourbon are kind of one and the same.
Yeah.
So we're going to be doing rye versus blended, and then we will be doing Canadian versus Japanese. So that is the new bracket system. That is what we're doing. But today's focus, again, Kentucky bourbon versus Tennessee.
That's right. And for taking over on the Kentucky slots, we are going to go ahead and I believe it's Maker's Mark.
Yes, we have Maker's Mark that we're going to be sampling and kind of talking about a little bit. And then also on the Tennessee side,
we'll be using everyone's favorite Jack Daniels, which everyone should know. I mean, it's pretty much everyone's first whiskey is Jack Daniels.
If you don't know Jack Daniels, you don't know Jack.
About whiskey.
Don't sue us, game show.
Right. Oh, like anybody hears this podcast anyways. But before we jump ahead too far, we do have to catch up on some old business, such as your comments from last week.
2 weeks ago.
Or 2 weeks ago, yes. So on that great fight we had, it was the king of the runs, Taco Bell versus Del Taco. And after a lot of comments, actually this is probably the most commented fight we've had so far. It came to being a pretty close one, but I believe Taco Bell lost.
Yep. Del Taco took the poll and our stomachs, and we ran away.
Yes, with their cold-ass fries.
With 62% of the votes for Del Taco. That being said, let's look back at some of the comments that you guys had. Tiffany said, I guess I have to give this one to Del Taco because the only time I'm at either of these places is to feed a crowd and their prices are better for that. Otherwise, I'd rather save the heartburn for real Mexican food. Yeah, and that was one of the big points is Del Taco. I mean, it's just the best bang for your buck, especially on Tuesdays. 3 tacos for $1.
You can definitely get more money, and not too far off of the similar quality with Del Taco. So I can't fault Tiffany with that. But I agree with her. Like, if it's just me, I'm going to like Costa Vida or like Beto's or something like that. Some good Mexican food, right?
Yeah, and there was I noticed quite a few comments of like, it's not real Mexican food. Well, we know.
It's gringo food, okay?
Yeah, that feels like such a privileged person thing to say. Yeah, that's not real Mexican food. Yes. Like, yeah, we know we're not going for real Mexican. We're going for a taco.
That's not real keto.
Yeah,
snooty asses.
We also know the orange chicken is not real Chinese, but it's still delicious.
Or made out of oranges.
Yes.
All right. Some more comments is Alex. Alex says, they both pale in comparison to authentic Mexican food, as we stated, but both of the two, Del Taco comes closer to the definition of food. Yes, as close as dog food comes to the definition of food as well.
I think someone commented about that too, dog food. Sean said, it was only a matter of time before these two giants duked it out. Del Taco is the winner in my opinion, mostly because their sauce and ingredients don't run through me like Taco Hell's does. But remember this, when you eat Del Taco, you can smell the taco. Basically, it'll give you gas from hell, depending on what you get.
Yes. Just yes. It's just yes.
I'm not even going to try and contend that one.
I'm also noticing that there's a lot of Del Taco comments you picked here, Tom. I know not all of them were about Del Taco. So, anyhow, John had to say, I've had both. Although where I live, there's no more Del Taco stores because they were garbage. Taco Bell is fast and cheap, but Del Taco has a wider selection and offer avocado. Disgusting. Both pale in comparison, or both compared try that again. But comparing the two is like comparing different dollar stores. Taco Bell being Dollar General and Del Taco being 5 and below. Smiley face, smiley face, smiley face. Well, here in Utah, we don't have any 5 and below, but I know what you're talking about. And yes, they are both cheap and easy. I'm just gonna leave that there. Cheap and easy.
Phrasing.
Yes. Food that you can go and get really quick and pay for it later. It's as I often say when I get either. I start eating the food and someone's like, aren't you worried about getting sick? And I'm like, that's future Brian's problem.
Yes, exactly. Thanks again for the feedback, though, guys. We had a lot of fun with that episode, and seems like you guys did as well. But let's move on to this week's fight.
All right. So what we're gonna do, since Del Taco did win, and we are going to properly be retiring the coin flip because we're going to be doing everything based off of judges. We're actually going to let Nick do the coin flip and have our dear friend Tom, who technically won the very last poll-driven judging, be the one, the Polish, be the one who decides which one's heads, which one's tails. So, almighty coin.
I got one.
All right. So,
I'm going to say Kentucky whiskey heads and Tennessee whiskey tails.
Nicholas.
Tails.
All right. So you get Tennessee.
So I have Tennessee. There we go.
All right. So let's go ahead and get these pours going properly on the mic. Let's see if we can do this right. Here you go.
So I figure we'll just do a quick taste test of both of them.
That's a good taste test size.
I'll be nice and loose.
Oh, hopefully you'll forget all your points. While I'm going ahead and pouring these, Tom, why don't you give us some information about Jack Daniels?
Jack Daniels, believe it or not, Jack Daniels is the most popular whiskey. Not in my state, not in your state, not just in the United States, in the entire world. It is by far the most popular whiskey in the entire world. So Jack Daniels, everyone knows it. It's a classic go-to. They know what they are. They know what they're good at, and they have perfected it, and everyone else knows it. Tennessee whiskey, I'm just going to go ahead and kind of dive into my argument from here, I guess. So
You might as well. I'm already diving into my whiskey.
cheers, brother. Yes. Oh, it smells so good. So here's what separates Tennessee whiskey from like Kentucky bourbon or really any other bourbons. First of all, bourbons are kind of the quintessential American whiskey. Bourbon has to be made in America for it to be a bourbon. And it's really a staple of Kentucky. Tennessee whiskey is, if you look at it at face value, is a bourbon. Bourbon has to be used by 51% corn mash, and Tennessee hits that. What separates Tennessee whiskey is it uses a maple charcoal filter before being aged into a barrel. So the very last step of the distilling process is it goes through the charcoal filter with maple, which kind of eases it out, makes it much smoother, and that's why it's everyone's first whiskey. It's very palatable, very easy for beginners. Makes it very smooth and very easy going down. Some of the notes that I get smelling it. I do get a little bit of the maple, a little bit of vanilla. It's got kind of a little bit of a fruity blend. I really like Jack Daniels. And the other thing, of course, about Tennessee whiskey is it has to be made in Tennessee. Imagine that. But not all whiskeys made in Tennessee are Tennessee whiskeys. Again, that has to be of the 51% corn mash and go through that filter, that maple charcoal filter. So that's a little bit about Tennessee whiskey. Again, it's the most popular type of whiskey worldwide. And if you don't know it, even if you don't drink, you know Jack Daniels, which means you know Tennessee whiskey. So let's just start with that.
Alrighty. Well, going against that will be our Kentucky, which in this one we're actually going to be using Maker's Mark. My personal favorite of all of the American whiskeys. I like Jack Daniels as well. And if that one's on sale at the liquor store, I'm going to get Jack Daniels. But if I have the choice between the two, I'm always going to go with Maker's Mark. Interesting enough, I was just reading up. Maker's Mark's origins began by a guy by the name of T. William Bill Samuels Sr., who actually purchased the original distillery to start making Maker's Mark. And my favorite part about this story is, though it is in Kentucky, it was done in October, my birth month, and the distillery's name, Burke's Distillery. That's the bomb. All right. At the moment, I don't care whether I win or lose. Just reading up this information is amazing. But similar about being the bourbon, specifically being a Kentucky bourbon, is it's got to be made in Kentucky. And in this case, Maker's Mark does something a little bit different than usual whiskeys or bourbons. It actually does not use rye whatsoever. They actually use a winter wheat, a red winter wheat specifically at 16%, along with 70% corn, and 14% barley mixed into their mash to make their whiskey. They also age it in barrels at a standard 2 years, which is the same as most American whiskeys. Jackson the same way. And with that, you have, though you are right, Jack Daniels is probably the most famous name of whiskey, but that doesn't always mean it's the best. When you go up to something looking at the bottles alone, let's say you're walking through a liquor store or you're at a pub and you're just looking at the bottles, there is no more definitive bottle, specialty bottle looking when it comes to a whiskey than Maker's Mark, with that red wax over the top that's showing the seal, with that lovely fat bottom, base for there with a long neck, comparison to a pretty standard looking whiskey bottle for Jack, because Jack Daniels has it the same as Jimmy Walker and a lot of other whiskeys all have the same bottle. Maker's Mark is different, and not just in the way that they are brewed and barreled, but they are also different in the way that they look. They're iconic. You look at a Maker's Mark, you can look at a Maker's Mark bottle without a label on it and you know it's Maker's Mark. So Jack Daniels may be the most famous, but just by the look, by the knowing that it's something special, Maker's Mark's got Jack beat. Hold on. Take another sip here.
Those are good points. However, this is not Maker's Mark versus Jack Daniels. This is Kentucky bourbon versus Tennessee whiskey. I do love Maker's Mark. Maker's Mark is fantastic, and you're right. The way they have the bottle with the wax and everything like that. It's definitely a really unique. Everything that they do, they've definitely set themselves apart, which I do like about them as a company, and they are a personal favorite of mine. Yes, but when you get into the bourbons, I guess the process that Tennessee whiskeys take by just with the filtering process that I talked about, it just makes it so much easier for all audiences. Something like Maker's Mark, if you're new to whiskey, you don't want to start with that. Not because it's not good, but because you're not ready. When you get into the whiskey world, there's a lot that you have to learn to really fully appreciate it. Learning to find the good notes, pushing past that initial, what a lot of people call just the bite of the alcohol. That there's just a lot a lot of hurdles you have to overcome to really become a whiskey fan. And so Tennessee whiskeys are much easier to get people started on that hurdle. To get people appreciating some of the more delicate notes that you're going to find in something like a Maker's Mark. Tennessee whiskey makes it palatable for a broader audience, a wider range of people. Plus, when you're going to order something like a whiskey Coke, nobody orders a whiskey Coke. You always order what? A Jack and Coke, which is Tennessee whiskey. Yeah. And that's the thing. And honestly, like, I've done other whiskeys with Coke, bourbons, and even Scotch, and a few others. None of them pair quite like a Jack and Coke. Like, I don't know what it is. Somehow, something about the Tennessee whiskey, specifically Jack Daniels, mixed with Coke, just goes better than anything else. A couple other really awesome cocktails with a Tennessee whiskey. And if you're a whiskey snob, just know I'm aware. Normally you don't use whiskey especially not fine whiskeys for cocktails. But there is some cocktails that should be mentioned. Obviously, we got the Jack and Coke. A Tennessee Mule, that's actually really good. I prefer it over the Moscow Mule quite a bit. I'm not the biggest vodka person, but so having the whiskey replace the vodka with that wonderful ginger flavor, it just works for me. Especially when you already have the maple undertones coming from Tennessee whiskey. There's also the Lynchburg lemonade. Whiskey, yes, I personally agree, should be drank to appreciate the spirit itself. But there is a time and a place for cocktails, and those are a few just really, really well-made cocktails that are really going to be best from a Tennessee whiskey.
Which again, you're right. I mean, when you go to order a whiskey and Coke, you're ordering a Jack and Coke 9 times out of 10. In fact, I don't remember ever seeing a bar or pub ever post it as a whiskey and Coke. It's always a Jack and Coke. Jack actually has a long neck bottles you can get there called Jack Cola. Yeah, they're super good. I get them all the time.
Yeah, they are. They sell their own pre-mixed Jack and Cokes.
Yeah, they're super good. But that being said, you're right where it comes to Jack is kind of the beginner whiskey drinkers drink. But a person who has learned what the better tasting whiskeys are generally move to the Kentucky end of it. They go to something that's got a little bit more bite, a little bit more flavor to it. Because when you drink Tennessee whiskey, with the way that they do their filtering and everything, they're killing what it is that drink a whiskey. That nice burn, that nice bite you get. You don't get that as much in the Tennessee as you do in a Kentucky. That sweet burn, that nice warm feeling in your body when you're drinking a whiskey, you get that in the Kentucky whiskey that you miss out in the Tennessee. Also, with mixers, one of my favorite mixed drinks that you can make with the Maker's Mark, it's called a cherry lemonade. Cherry lemonade, where you mix it with some cherry and grenadine into that, and it is super good, along with some lemonade. Oh my gosh, dude. You know, I got the vapors, southern kind of thing. That's the kind of drink you drink down that point, like right at the beginning of August. So like right now, that's that time of drinking this drink. You get that with the Kentucky variety. You get that nice bite, that nice burn, but not where it's like you're hacking up a lung after. It's that I'm drinking a bloody whiskey. I want to feel that I'm drinking a whiskey. I don't want to feel that I'm drinking a whiskey flavored water.
And you don't feel like it's a whiskey flavored water drinking Jack Daniels. No one has drank a Tennessee whiskey and thought, you know what, this is just like water with whiskey. No.
Outside of the thought that it's going to kill your liver, I'll put it to the test that you can't finish the rest of or you can finish downing the rest of that Jack bottle that's right here in front of us without a problem. You can't do the same thing with the Maker's Mark because the bite is, and actually what you're expecting from a whiskey, relative to what you get from the Jack bottle.
Actually, I could finish the Maker's Mark. This doesn't count for the argument. I could finish the Maker's Mark actually easier, and there's a lot more of the Maker's Mark, easier than I could of the Jack. But that's just because I really like Maker's Mark.
Because you're a whiskey aficionado who enjoys good whiskey.
Yes. Well, I'm a novice. I'm still very much a novice, but I really like Maker's Mark. And, you know, Jack was my introductory whiskey, and I've just kind of moved on from it. But, again, that doesn't count for the arguments.
You know that one friend of yours, female friend of yours in high school who, you know, you had that one time with just to get things started, you know. But now you're moving on to that cheerleader, which is, you know, Kentucky.
But there's always going to be a place in my heart for Jack Daniels. And I mean, Tennessee whiskey in general. I keep saying Jack Daniels. It is kind of the most known brand. There are other brands, but that's the one that that I'm drinking right now. So, a couple other things. I guess a couple other cocktails that I just want to mention real quick. You have the Old Fashioned, the Manhattan, and the Mint Julep. Now, I will say that the Mint Julep is definitely going to be better with a Kentucky bourbon. Old Fashions and Manhattans. Personally, I do like a more robust one, but again, like these are drinks that are not, they're not your daiquiri. They're not your like really fruity, easy to go down. They're not your White Claw, right? They are the gentleman's drink. And if you want to get into something like that, absolutely start with a Tennessee whiskey. It's the world's favorite whiskey. It's the most palatable for the most people, and it's going to make those cocktails awesome. So
one of my favorite mixed drinks is an Old Fashioned.
Yeah.
Okay. And if you go down to the Beehive, that's downtown Salt Lake. It's a great little pub down there. Not sponsored, but like to be. You go up there and you talk with them, and you're like, okay, I want an Old Fashioned. They will ask you, Kentucky or Tennessee? And I always get the Kentucky because, again, it's that bite. I love the taste of an Old Fashioned. And, you know, if 9 times out of 10, you go to a pub and they don't ask you, it's going to be a Tennessee because 2 reasons. 1, it's what everyone knows it with. And 2, it's generally what everyone has on hand. Because people at pubs, they don't know better.
Yeah. Well, and it's Tennessee whiskey, Jack Daniels is going to be a little bit cheaper as well. Yeah, I mean, for their craft, that's the other thing that they do have going for them is like they've got it very well presented for the budget. It's not like, it's not like a cheap vodka by any means. You're not looking at a $6 bottle of vodka and trying to compare it with Grey Goose. Jack Daniels, while it is like on the cheaper end of whiskey, it's still a very fine whiskey. It's not apocalypse whiskey here, okay?
No. But there are variants too, like the cheaper bottle we did get with the Jack Daniels is just your base. There are the longer age, heavy barrel ones you can get with Jack Daniels. Similar with Maker's Mark. You get Maker's Mark 101, which is aged for 10 years. They're fantastic. And for people who don't know, the longer a barrel or longer aged whiskey is, generally the smoother it is. So it's got a little bit less of the bite that you get from a less aged one, but it's got the warmth and that slight burn that you're wanting relative to the variant. And both of those, the Jack Black Label or the Maker's 101, they both are barreled longer. I was also reading while you were trying to give up points that I was actually wrong on a point. I said that they are both barreled for 2 years. I was wrong. Jack is barreled for 2 years. Maker's Mark, just their base level, is barreled for 6. So it already is going to be barreled for a longer, smoother time than the Jack. Now, you do pay for it. Maker's Mark is more expensive. It's on a higher tier level of you're paying. Yeah. Now, here in Utah, we have the alcohol beverage and yada yada. Basically, the state pays, it's a state-run liquor store, so they charge 88% markup on all alcohol. So us trying to compare dollars to donuts when it comes to money on what these will be slightly different than maybe what you have. But as an example, Jack Daniels, you can generally get around $15 to $20 for a good-sized bottle.
It's more like 25 to 30. Maker's Mark is usually around 35 to 40.
No, most of the time that they're on sale, they're like, I usually only look when they're on sale. But so Jack Daniels, it's usually around, like on a good day, you get it for $14.99. Sometimes it's $19.99 when it's on sale. But Maker's Mark is, again, usually around $24.99 to $29.99. So there is a price difference, but not by much. If they're both on sale, I usually end up going with Maker's. But if they're not on sale, say Jack is on sale, I'll usually go with Jack. Just because I am not an alcoholic, because alcoholics go to meetings, but I am a fan of whiskey. I usually...
Is it like club meetings? Or
Yeah.
Is that where we get together and drink more?
I'm a proper alcoholic in the new age, sir. We game online playing Call of Duty while drinking.
Yeah, there we go. Fortnite. Just kidding.
Oh, here we go again. But yeah, so between these two, it's kind of a hard one because for me, I enjoy both. If I have my choice, I go with Maker's Mark, and not just because it's my argument, it's because it's my favorite out of the two. But if I'm looking for a whiskey to do some good mixing with, if I want to go with something just ready to go and get me a shot going, it's Jack. It's almost always available, where Maker's Mark may not always be available. In fact, I've been to pubs and stuff that don't have Maker's Mark just because they don't want to pay for it, or it's not as common in their area. And again, it's not Jack versus Maker's Mark. It is Tennessee versus Kentucky. But it's a similar argument. Kentucky's are almost always, at least quality Kentucky's, are almost always more expensive than Tennessee's. And it might be because of how they're aged. Kentucky's are generally aged slightly longer. I thought it was only like a year when it was like 3. But apparently in Maker's Mark they do 6. Tennessee's are generally aged for 2 to 3 years on the low end. So these both are high quality ones on the ones we chose. The quality and quantity of them are the big differences, I think, really. And even in the taste. Again, Jack is good. Maker's Mark is better, and I think we will both admit with the flavor of it, Maker's Mark's better. but it's relative to what you want to pay for it, and what you can do with it.
Yeah, what you want to pay for it, and really, what exactly? I couldn't have said that better.
Apparently.
Yeah, I mean, and again, like when it comes to whiskeys, like sure, lots of people will start it out as like a party drink. Like whiskey, if you're in any sort of whiskey community, it is not a party drink. It is a drink to relax with, wind down with. You put a couple of rocks in your glass, whether it's whiskey stones or an ice cube, or if you prefer it neat. And I switched up depending on which whiskey I'm drinking or just the mood that I'm in. Right now we're doing it on whiskey stones, so there's no dilution at all, which is how I normally prefer it. It just cools it just enough. It doesn't make it too cold. It cools it, and it doesn't dilute it. Whiskey is something that's just great to calm down with, relax with, tolerate your horrible relatives with over Thanksgiving dinner.
Which we all are planning on doing a Turkey Day. We all know it.
Yep. Which is one of the points that we brought up in the ad for this series is which whiskey's best for the big day of turkeys, right?
That's right.
And I would say that Jack Daniel's is definitely not Jack Daniel's, excuse me. Tennessee whiskey is definitely one of the quintessential whiskeys, best, safest go-tos for you and your closest family members, whether you have to smuggle it in through a flask or it's to keep your belligerent uncle from getting too rowdy. Whatever it is, Tennessee whiskey is an incredibly safe, delicious, just all-around great choice.
And yes, if you want to go safe, if you want to go available right now and just to get drunk on the sake of being drunk around your family, by all means, go Tennessee, get some Jack. If you want a quality whiskey, something to enjoy, something you're not just trying to pound to get away from your annoying uncle, something you wish to enjoy around your family, you go with Kentucky. In this case, Maker's Mark.
But we have someone else that's going to give their thoughts.
Yes. So what we're going to do now is we're going to have Nick, as he's been absorbing all of our nonsense for the last 20 minutes, go ahead and try to make his decision unbiased, though we've been friends for 16 years and we might not be friends after this, be unbiased completely to which
Whose home are you in?
Whose home could you not find? Be completely biased or unbiased and try to choose which argument was better. Now, Nick, you aren't really a whiskey person. You don't really drink heavy alcohols. In the time I've known you, it's always been, as we would call it, cheer beer or like Zima-like drinks. Have you ever done whiskey before at all?
I have had, and this does not sway my decision, but I have had a Jack and Coke. So
Yes.
Again, we talked about being noobs, drinking Jacks and Cokes and Jacks in general. But after listening to the arguments and everything that we had to say, and again, completely unbiased, what are your thoughts?
So this is really interesting because I came into this not knowing really anything about whiskey, and so it's kind of weird that I would be judging this, as I never thought that I would be. But I have been friends with Brian. I have been friends with him for a while. So no matter what I decide here, it's going to be deemed one way or the other of whether or not it was favoritism or whether or not I swayed so far to the other side to make up for that. So that's.
But I'm okay with that.
I bet you are.
But you guys both had some really good points, and I never thought that I would learn so much about whiskey. And it was actually quite interesting. It was interesting, a lot more interesting than I thought it would be when I thought, well, okay, they're going to be debating whiskey. I didn't think that it could last so long. But
You're not the first person to tell me that.
And I will say when you first poured the Jack Daniel's Tennessee whiskey, that I've never really been a whiskey drinker, but that smelled really good. The smell of the Tennessee whiskey, that was almost enough to sway me right off the bat. Like those first few points that were made, I got to be honest, I wasn't really listening because I was enjoying the smell. But then you have, Maker's Mark, Kentucky whiskey. Brian had some good points, and I'm actually really impressed at the research that went into both points being made. There was a lot more research than I thought there would be. So with that being said, I mean, I'm not going to fact check any facts because I have no idea. So, gosh, this is really hard for me actually. I think for me, based off of because I am a lightweight, and the points of it being a beginner introduction to whiskey, I think I'm going to have to go with the Tennessee whiskey.
Yes.
Well, it was good being friends with you, sir.
You'll be back.
And again, this was a hard one because I enjoy both of these a lot. And they are both very similar. The bases are very much the same. Maker's Mark is a little bit of a special case when it comes to Kentucky whiskey, as it is anyways.
Yeah.
So I can't really be upset with this decision by any means. Like I said, it was going to be a hard decision. And then with Nick having no experience in whiskey at all, he had to purely go off of our arguments, which is what we were hoping for. So with that being said, it looks like Tennessee is moving on to the next round.
Woo! All right. Hope you guys had your brackets ready at least for that. But if not, you get a freebie.
Yeah, we'll do that as the free space in the center.
Yes, exactly. Also, what do you guys think? Do you guys have anything that you would like to correct us on, or any input? Comment. Go to our Facebook page at Be Hero Now, or to our Twitter at Be Hero Fights.
Along with that, comment on what your favorite Tennessee and Kentucky whiskeys are. Not just which one you prefer, but there are so many other variants of Tennessee and Kentucky whiskeys. Let us know which one do you like better, if at all. Do you guys even drink whiskey?
And yeah, do you prefer a whiskey cocktail, or do you drink it straight? Do you drink it on the rocks? Do you like it neat? What's your preferred way to enjoy a nice whiskey? At the end of the night, at the end of the weekend, or for a special holiday? Let us know. Give us your thoughts. Next week,
our fight next week, we are going to have...
I think it's the one that I'm looking forward to the most, actually. We're going to do Scotch
versus Irish whiskey.
Yes.
So for the Irish end, we're going to be using Tullamore Dew, personal favorite of mine of all my whiskeys.
Yes, and for Scotch, we're going to be using none other than Johnny Walker 18-year platinum label.
So it should be a great one. We are probably going to get completely sauced, so it should be awesome. And stay tuned to find out who our next special guest judge will be. So go ahead and find us right here on Spotify, SoundCloud, Apple Podcast, and Google Podcasts on your feeds every Thursday.
Share with your family and friends, and invite anyone else who might enjoy these debates or have any input on any of them as well. The more we can get the word out there, the better. It really helps us a lot. It goes a long way.
And the more you guys, share your stuff, the more likely we can get sponsors, and the more likely we can actually pay for all of these whiskeys we're planning on buying.
Yes. And the more sweet prizes we'll be able to get for you guys.
Yep. With, again, the winner of the bracket wins a special prize, which we will hold on to until our final episode right before Thanksgiving.
That's right. Thanks again, guys. And always remember to
fight on.
Hey there, this is Dougie Fox, and I'm the host of the Devotion Wrestling Podcast. If you like professional wrestling and you want to get more content in your day, come check us out. We drop episodes every week on Thursday on Spotify and SoundCloud. We have really fun interviews with local professional wrestlers in the Utah area, as well as we review and discuss other pro wrestling news and current events. So check us out on Spotify and SoundCloud every Thursday.